One of the biggest misconceptions about injury is that people think they get hurt doing something dramatic. They imagine injuries happening while lifting heavy weights or playing sports or shoveling snow or doing some physically demanding work. Yet when you ask people what they were doing when their back went out, the answer is often surprisingly simple. They say, I bent over to pick up the garbage. I reached down for a bar of soap. I leaned into the dishwasher. The movement itself wasn't extraordinary. It's the body that was struggling already. Now, when you do something heavy, like exercising and lifting heavy weights or performing some challenging tasks, in those moments, we often pay attention to our posture and the mechanics, so we get our body in the right position. We think about how we move, we maybe brace ourselves a little bit, and we actually, by consciousness, engage our muscles correctly. But during routine activities, our attention disappears and we actually move through life very unconsciously. And we stop thinking about how we're bending and twisting and reaching, and we just kind of rely on these automatic movements. And for a healthy body with good stability and balance, that's not a problem. But when the spine has lost stability, when the joints have become restricted, when the muscles are compensating for weakness elsewhere, those automatic movements begin to place stress on tissues that are already overloaded. The body has a remarkable ability to adapt, but when one structure can no longer do its job effectively, another structure attempts to compensate. So now, ideally, your bones would provide support of weight. The stabilizer muscles would hold those bones together in the proper position, and the larger muscles would move and create motion. Now, each part has its role. And when the structure becomes compromised, that workload begins to shift, and the entire system becomes less efficient and more vulnerable. And eventually, you reach a tipping point. And then one dumb, ordinary little movement becomes the final straw. And we know the injury didn't occur because someone bent over to pick up a sock. The injury occurred because the body had been compensating for weeks and months and even years. And that simple little movement just exceeded the remaining capacity of your body. And this is why healing often requires more than just simply reducing pain. It requires retraining your movement, correcting the structure, and just giving the body to heal and to retrain yourself in order to move and lift properly. People must learn to move differently. They must learn to shift the loads into their hips and legs instead of to their spine. They must learn to use their larger muscles instead of relying on the smaller muscles. And they must become conscious of movement patterns that have become automatic. In many ways, this is like learning a new sport. At first, it becomes awkward and it requires thought and attention, and mistakes are common. But over time, you begin to create better movements, and those movements become natural. The goal is to move like a warrior rather than just a victim of circumstance. A warrior moves with intention, with a strong foundation, a stable center of gravity, and deliberate mechanics. They don't simply collapse into motion and just do whatever they want. They actually control every movement. The same principle applies to health. The path out of chronic strain and recurring injury is not just by simply avoiding activity, it's leaning in and moving with awareness during those moments that are ordinary. Because it's often not those extraordinary moments that hurt us, it's the thousands of unconscious movements that we make every single day. When movement becomes intentional, the body gains the ability to heal. When movement remains unconscious, the cycle of compensation, strain, and injury actually continues. So the ordinary moments of life are not harmless. They are either reinforcing healthy mechanics or reinforcing dysfunction. And that choice happens every day in the moment, and it's so routine that we barely notice them. But you have the choice. Which one will you choose?